Hello and greetings again. Thank you so much for joining us on this Monday from your various parts of the world. Welcome to this OpenScape event. My name is Mwenya and I will be your host today. I am a theatre maker and a performance studies scholar at the University of Cape Town in South Africa. And yeah, it's my pleasure to welcome you to our Dreamstorm on rest, care and alternative practices. And what I thought I would do to start off with before the other co-hosts and facilitators introduce themselves is to give you a sense of the of how this is going to go this afternoon and where I am. The idea of calling it a Dreamstorm is really so that it is a conversation that is unrealistic potentially, that is an invitation to really think outside of our current paradigms and contexts to what a restful future might look like for each of us. So the idea is to really embrace the Dreamstorm part of the title of this event. And we really want to invite you to share your thoughts and your practices and the kinds of things you know are happening in various parts of the world towards really kind of sharing some resources. So that's really what this is. Imagine fireside, international, transnational fireside conversation with strangers. That is the vibe here. So the invitation is really open for you to share your thoughts, use the chat. I think we're all fairly familiar with how Zoom goes. For this first bit, we thought we would just tell you who is part of making this happen. And to firstly introduce OpenScape, for those of you who might not be familiar, is a transnational platform for a group of curators and artists who have come together as partners to host conversations, discussions about kind of contemporary performance and arts practice more broadly. And there's a link in the chat if anyone wants to have a look at what OpenScape is about. And there are partners, either organizations or individuals across 5 different continents who have been working together over the last year or so to curate events like this. And so I'm an individual as an OpenScape partner, and the 2 other people that have put their heads together to make this event happen are Nika and Shiva, who I'm going to ask to introduce themselves to you now and just tell you a little bit about how we came to this particular topic. So I'm going to hand over to you 2.
So I was named first, probably I'll go to continue. Thank you, Mwenya, for introducing us. My name is Nika and I'm a curator and theatre researcher now based in Central Europe, somewhere between Switzerland and France, to be more precise, in Basel. And I'm trying to, being for almost a year in exile, I'm trying to take care of myself, which is very new and kind of unfamiliar, because I found out recently that I'm not good in taking care of myself, and I'm always taking care of the others, being curator and producer. And that's where all this discussion actually came from for me. And what I'm mostly interested in is self-care and also burnout. I'm not sure we are going to discuss it today, but it's something which really bothers me a lot, also because I hear about other people being in a burnout around me, and I will maybe try to concentrate on self-care in my next projects to avoid these conversations about being tired or being in a burnout among the artists which surround me. And that's it, more or less, for now, and we will have a chance to continue later on. Thank you for joining us for this discussion.
Thanks, Nika. Hi, I'm Shiva. I'm an actor, producer, and arts manager. I'm also the co-founder and artistic director of an organization called Sandbox Collective, based out of Bangalore in India. Sandbox is a creative fluid space for artistic exchange. We mostly work around curating and conceptualizing performances and programs around the themes of gender, identity, and citizenship. Well, as part of OpenScape, the mandate that we have is that every month, different partners curate events on this platform. And when it was our turn, it very naturally was one of the things that I did, which was to turn to Nika and Munya and ask if they would be happy to be co-conspirators on a topic and conversation around rest and care. And before we knew, we were already hatching plans on dreaming with strangers, like Munya put it. So for me personally, the reason why this is really important as a conversation is because for the last 3 years almost, I have been wondering and thinking about ideas around care and solidarities in the arts and about creating structures around that. And to think about it more personally, I feel it's also about what does it mean to pause, to take breaks, and why are we always so apologetic? Like, I constantly keep correcting myself about not saying sorry all the time. And how do we find these moments to just pause and reflect and think if you're constantly just doing? So these are the kind of questions that I come with to this space, and I hope that we can listen, talk, share, and learn from each other, from this group that we are part of. And looking forward to that. Thank you so much for joining us. Over to you, Munya.
Right, thank you both. Just to add my 2 cents as to how we have come to this. In some of my own practice at the moment, I've been particularly interested in rest as something that I realize is hard to come by. I'm an academic, I'm a maker, and straddle these 2 work environments. And the idea is rest as a liberatory has become quite close and personal to me over the last few months. And I'm finding it really challenging to kind of unlock some of my own hang-ups about even saying out loud that it's something that I deserve and worthy of. You know, it becomes quite confronting quite quickly for me. So in the kind of rest care alternative practices conversation, I've become particularly interested about how to support each other in our rest. And not to rest in order to be more productive, to rest because we can do that. And to rest, you know, to be, I guess, more tuned into a kind of imaginative possibility. So yeah, these are some of the places that I'm coming from for this conversation. So Shiva and Nika and I have the pleasure of having invited our fellow we each invited a fellow co-conspirator, instigator, trickster, friend, collaborator, who will be in conversation with us. We're going to split into three groups once these 3 other people have given us some provocations actually around these ideas of rest and care in order to start a smaller group conversation. So I'd like to pass the virtual microphone over to Natalia, followed by Joni, and then Nisha. And the idea really is, yeah, to kind of open up a series of portals for us to have our own conversations about what comes up for us at all, even before we start to dream about what is possible. So Natalia, over to you.
Thank you, Munya. It's really an honor and a pleasure for me to be a part of such an exciting event. And when Nika asked me if I was interested in taking part in this kind of a project, I thought immediately like, oh my God, like we have in Russian the saying, the shoemaker that goes with no shoes. And that was exactly what I was thinking of, because the issue of rest and self-care has been very relevant for me, especially in the last years. I am a psychologist, interpreter, poet, and translator based in St. Petersburg for the moment. And yeah, just want to share a personal story with you that 2 years ago, I stopped working at the university where I taught Swedish language. I've been doing that for 20 years. And when I have finally done that, I thought, oh my God, now my life will change because I will have so much more time for doing the things that I love, for taking care of myself, for resting. But it turned out that that wasn't exactly the case, because when I started doing more of the things that I really inspired by, like Butoh performances and writing poetry, translating poetry, I just found out that it's very hard to stop, and you don't know when to stop. And when you now say that we deserve a rest and we have a right for that, not in order to be more productive, but in order to allow ourselves to be in that imaginary world, in that dream state, which is so necessary for the things that we all do. I just found it sometimes it is even more difficult. So I started to look for tools of how to take care of myself better, not in order for something, but just because this is also a part of who I am. So it's also an identity issue here, I think. So those were the things that I would like to discuss with you, and to learn how it is for you and what can we do both for ourselves and for our fellowship members. What can we do in order to make our life more equal to what we essentially are? So I think that would be probably enough to begin with. Very happy to see all of you, different faces. I miss that a lot because I can't travel that much as I used to before. So it really makes me very happy to see so much of different faces here.
Thanks, Natalia. Lovely. Thank you so much. Joni.
Hi, everybody. It's I'm really happy to be here. It's also nice to see a familiar face in the public, which is great. And yes, thank you, Mwenya, for inviting me. I was thinking as you were speaking, Natalia, I had so many thoughts about like a university space that I will come to now. But maybe I can just start off by saying that I am a theatre maker, if you want to say like artist, in live performance. I'm in music and dance and choreography and acting and dramaturgy and etc. etc. And Mwenya and I met in a university space actually, and we became allies and were helping each other out and doing a lot of co-teaching together, and critiquing a lot the university space. And as you were talking now, I remember the story that a friend told me that I also, when I finally quit teaching at a university in Johannesburg in South Africa, I taught for 7 years. And then I was speaking to a mentor of mine who's a little bit older, and she said to me, she's like, oh, 7 years. Okay, cool. It's going to take you 7 years to get out of that rhythm. And I was like, sorry, what? And she was like, yes, you get into this like productive rhythm of 7 years. You have to also purge that somehow and relearn how to relearn how to rest, relearn how to listen to yourself, relearn how to access desires. So I think I also come to this topic as like a student of rest practices. I am interested in like rest and care because I don't know necessarily how to implement it in my own life yet, but I can see like that I need it and I want it, and that the people that I'm interacting with and working with, I think it's, it's very much for me this post-COVID, post-lockdown moment of like care and tenderness and trying to implement this more into our practices. So I also access this theme through a workshop that I have been researching and making over the last 5 years around consent and body autonomy. And it's framed within somatic dance and somatic dance and dance improvisation as the kind of like performative framework to look at consent work. And And through this work, I look a lot at like calming the nervous system down as a starting point to slowing down, as a starting point to taking care, as a starting point to understand the body. And also I understand this more as a way, like you have to self-regulate your nervous system and co-regulate with the collective, that it's not, you can't do it in isolation, that it's like, it's always in a feedback loop. So I'm interested also in self-care. And then I'm also interested, okay, not to have self-care in isolation, like you need the group, like I am nothing without the group kind of. So in this like collective care moment. I have like 2 more things that I want to say. I know I'm talking a lot. So that's the rest, the kind of self-regulation, co-regulation, consent as like a tool, not necessarily to like communicate boundaries with others, but to be like, okay, what do I consent with myself? Like I allow myself to rest. I consent that I'm going to take a nap now. I consent that I'm not going to answer that email. So I think a lot about this consent work and what we allow ourselves to do. And through this work, what I'm also interested in looking at is this idea of asymmetrical care. I mean, these are like big terms, I think, like asymmetrical care. And this, another thing I'm going to throw in there is this like adaptable care, adaptability. That, you know, not like if we're looking at the collective, that not everybody, it doesn't have to be symmetrical. Like some people need more care than other people. Some people need more rest than other people, you know, so how can we look in the collective at like, at sharing resources, at like looking at, you know, adaptable, asymmetrical, that's okay. Asymmetry is okay. In terms of also care work. Yeah. I have a lot more to say, but I think I will rein it in there.
Amazing. Thank you, Joni. Nisha.
Hello, everyone. It's just absolutely amazing to be here. I'm very, very excited. It's also great to see quite a few familiar faces today. So for the ones who I don't know, I'm based out of Bangalore, which is in the south of India. It's actually right in the center of the south of India. It's a crazy little city that's exploding as it seems, and all of the urban problems that plague most cities plague ours too. So I work in that context. I practice as a playwright, director, dramaturg, performer, also as educator, and I'm snatching restfulness in the middle of many other things. So for me, rest has been an ongoing struggle. I'm sure many of you relate with that here. It's just snatching restfulness wherever possible, little pockets of rest, and seeing that as like a continuum. But I want to share a little bit about how I came into this, how I came to be interested in some of this. So I am learning to, over time, articulate and build processes and practices around what I call the anti-oppressive arts practice, which is my own, cobbled up from ways of working of my own, my peers, collaborative ways of working, learning from each other. And that really, the seeds of it was sowed in the Me Too movement. This was about 2017, 2018. And dealing with the Me Too movement really made me, that was normalized, was invisibilized. And a lot of it got visibilized because of the movement. And that coincided with so this post, this bit of the Me Too movement also coincided with my own start as a director. And so I also had to reckon with the power in the room that I had. But then I was holding this power in the room, knowing that I don't want to replicate a lot of the toxicity that I was in as a performer or as a learner. And so I was also learning how to how to find new ways of working. And in all of this, what was happening socially, culturally, politically was the increasing fascism in India. And I hold an identity of that of a minority woman. And I'm also a first generation artist. There is really no one from my family or extended family. There is no one, very few people, like I can count the number of people who might be from my community that one can, share struggles with. So all of this really kind of came together in one real potent period of time. And I realized that I needed to kind of hold myself through this, through my creative practice, through my self, that was in turmoil. And out of this came some of these sort of constant, sitting with some of these. So some of the stuff that that I'm sitting with all the time and building processes for are questions like, with slowness, is that even possible in the context that I come from, right? And when I see the context I come from, it's, very little institutional backing with the kind of intersectional identity that I hold, and it isn't valued in a context like mine. So how does one even create with slowness? How does one deal with conflicting needs in the room? Is it possible to approach these needs with curiosity, not shame? How does one work with everything that's present in this body? Our personal histories, our community histories, our preconditioned notions, all of our, all of our desires, all of our joys. How can one work with everything that's present? And how does one work intentionally with bodies that have very different relationships to power structures than my own, or than, people who hold more marginalized identities? How does that work? Because clearly, and I want to echo what Joni was saying, that not everybody needs or has access to the same amounts of care. What does it look like to be open to embracing that inequity in some ways? So these are some of the things that I'm sitting with. It's constant. I'm, often looking back at the ways in which I articulated or thought through or layered this practice and thinking, okay, wow, it's changed quite a bit. And I'm really enjoying that as well. So part of the excitement for today is to be able to have all of these articulations and all of these, messy struggles kind of interact with and see where it goes. Yeah, so more maybe in the breakout rooms.
Oh, fabulous. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks, Nisha. Thank you, Natalia. Thanks, Joni. I just want to pick up on something before we do go into the breakout rooms, which I think you all allude to and is making me think about Tricia Hersey's work. I don't know if anybody on the group has heard of the NAP Ministry. She has just written a book called Rest is Resistance, a Manifesto. And it's really interesting for this particular, exactly. For this particular subject, I'm reading it at the moment, and what I'm particularly struck by, because in a way it's quite obvious, is how rest is framed to frame rest as resistance, and to think about all the ways that it pushes back against, all the things that capitalism will have you believe about yourself, and about productivity as the goal of your life. And to read it, it's quite self-explanatory, but it's quite a thing to think with clarity and with imagination, and with questions about how that can look in a person's day, in a person's week, in a group's formation. So yeah, as each of you were speaking, some of that came to mind. So we really want to get into a big fat chat with you all. And so we're going to break into 3 groups. Natalia and Nika will be in one, Nisha and Shiva will be in one, and Joni and myself will be in one. And we'll let Zoom do its random magic for all the participants who have joined us today. Gosh, welcome back, everyone. I don't know how it was. I'm so curious to know how it was in your groups, but we were mid sentence when Zoom did what Zoom does. Sure, okay, so we have half an hour left. It would be great to continue in this bigger forum. Curious to hear what some of the conversations have been, what has come up in a kind of summarized or nuggets kind of way, if somebody from each of the groups wants to share. And then we also wanted to end with building a collective word cloud. So want to leave 10 minutes or so before the end for that. But maybe we can just open it up now to a member from each group or whoever wants to finish their thought in this realm, or ask some questions, give us a summary of what came up in your groups, etc. This part is really open and open circle, as I think Nisha said earlier. So anyone who wants to kind of jump in with what was particularly interesting or inspiring for them to get us going, feel free.
If I may start, probably I will start because we have a suggestion from our group of 9 people, 8 of whom were present. We want we talked a lot, and then all of a sudden Paola said that probably sometimes it helps you to rest if you keep silence. So what we want to suggest for some minutes, to keep silence, to turn off your cameras and your mics if needed, and to do whatever you want to do now, and not to share it in words, but not to share it verbally, but maybe to share it with some kind of energy flowing. So what we suggest is, just to give some time to ourselves and not to talk. If you follow it, just, can do it now. If you're not participating in this, you feel free to interrupt our silence whenever you want.
Thank you so much for joining us on this one, because we thought it was so important. Thank you once again, Paolo, for your suggestion that it is so important not just to talk about something, but also do it and be it. And we had a very interesting discussion, which was very honest, very sincere, shared a lot of different experiences. You'll see some of what we came to in the word cloud we are going to make. And what we were talking a lot about is connection with nature and the meaning of slowing down and stopping, and different emotions, sometimes difficult emotions that rest or even thoughts of rest might provoke in us. And we also got back to what Joni was talking about that consent. Do we really allow ourselves to, even if we have planned the rest, but do we really have a consent to do that? Which is a very important topic, I think. So I was really enjoying being with my group, and I would like to thank once again all of them. It was a brilliant experience. And I also put in the chat for those of you who would like to read that text of David Whyte in case you wanted to take part of it. So you can just download and read it at some point when you need a reminder of resting. Thank you.
I just want to invite someone else from the group that I was in to perhaps share. That's okay. Or not, I can go then. All right, okay. Then pitch in if you think I should be adding anything. Yeah. So we spent some time actually looking at very specific practices of body and also a lot of locational practices as well. We spoke quite a bit about accessing nature. We spoke also about accessing what is in our histories, in our ancestries, practices which are already present, and some of us are making our way back to some of those practices. So what is that like? There was also right in the beginning bits about what it means to have chronic needs in the room, and what does it mean to contractualize that, to put it into access riders, which is something I found quite interesting as well. It's quite far removed from the reality that I'm operating in, so I found that very interesting. That was something that came up right in the beginning. There were many practices which intuitively felt like, we do in some ways, but to give an articulation for it and to visibilize it was really important. And it really made me personally think of what are the other things that is already present that we're not realizing does this job of restfulness or nourishing. And so that's something that I'm taking back. Also, a lot of us had, I think, similar ways of approaching rest and care, but we articulated it so differently. And I personally enjoyed hearing those articulations. It gave me a kind of fresher perspective to look at things. And, I have little things in my parking lot now that I'm going to go back and kind of sit with. Like words, which visibilize some things, vegetating, arriving, something that I personally looked at as not good, like rabbit holing. Someone else in the group, Dia, gave it a more nourishing spin, right? And those were really helpful, I think, to see our practices through the eyes of somebody else and through the words of someone else. There was also a lot of, in the room, there was a lot of practices that seem to have been enabled by people in the room. So care practices for community that were enabled in the room. A lot of joy and practices which were about joy and playfulness, which were already actioned. And then we also did bits where we dreamt up in an ideal sort of world, what can we dream up? And we did this very specifically for our needs, and we did this specifically for community needs. So all of this, which we need and very practical, that's one side of things. But the flip side of it is if we were just allowed to dream up things. Some of them were so simple that it all, I mean, it's a bit heartbreaking to know that something so simple seems so unattainable. So that was also a bit sort of tinged with sadness, but a lot of it was stuff that we all kind of, were nodding along to. So there was a lot of wishful dreaming present as well. Yeah, there's a couple of little other things, but I think we can put it together in the toolkit because it'll take a bit more time to speak about. Yeah. But I just also want to say like a shout out to the team who was there. Thank you for coming as you are.
So I guess a report back from our breakout session. I would also like to extend an invitation to anybody in the group who would like to also say something or give feedback or a little report back of our discussion or what the highlights were. Drop the mic.
We tried, Joni. We tried.
You dropped a muted mic. It was
dropped
great.
a muted mic. Or Mwenya, if you also want to. Okay, you can add in one. So in our breakout session, we were looking. Mwenya and I posed this question to the group about like to dream about what could care and rest practices look like in your practice. And there was like also a lot of talk about, okay, this question also brings up it mirrors a lot of frustration. Yes, so it's like, oh, okay, here's the question to dream, but actually, how to get there, like how to actually get to the point of dreaming. So there was also a lot of talk of, okay, there is also this moment of frustration and how do I say this, like practices in the systems, like in the ways that we are working or what we are confronted by that are like anti-care, that are anti-collective. And so like, how do we actually bring ourselves to deal with that? And I think like this moment of someone's like, oh, I'm like venting now. This has just become like a vent or a rant or whatever. And how to also allow space for that, right? To vent can also be to rest, to get something out of the body, to like. So yes, that kind of, we were also listening to a lot of personal stories, and in that way, I was thinking also a lot of questions came up, like what would guilt-free and protective rest look like within the collective? What would guidance and solidarity look like in a collective as a care practice? What would more empathy look like in a collective practice? What would be a way to like work smart and not hard? So we had this one-liner that came out from a member in the group called "Little effort, a lot of magic," which I love so much. Thank you, Akash, for that. Yes, so to kind of like to keep asking more questions about how we can implement rest within our daily lives and practices, and also this idea of the lens of rest. Like I can look at things in a restful way. I can choose that making food in the morning or making porridge in the morning is restful. Eating is restful. Taking the metro and interacting with public is restful. So I can also, how do I get myself into a mentality of like looking at my daily life and looking at my practice from the lens of rest. Also looking a lot at like speed, like a pace, and how to like slow things down in order to like find rest, or in the way that I understand it, also like slowing down the nervous system so that you can I love this thing, these words. You can arrive, you can vegetate, you can, you know, all of these things I think is also about like connecting with the self. And allowing, this is a big thing I think as well, allowing yourself to rest, allowing yourself to dream, allowing yourself to even like answer the question of like, what could it look like, as something that came out. And then a really strong image that stood out for me within the group was this idea of like weeds. Like there is like these like hard structures that we are working against that are like much bigger than us, that are frustrating, that are oppressive, that are exploitative. And how does rest come in like weeds, like in between the structures and all the way through? Yes, I don't know. Mwenya, is there anything else you want to say?
Yeah, I mean, we had a really interesting conversation that I feel like could have gone on for another few hours, as it sounds like the rest of the groups could have as well. Just to add, one other thing that came out that is sitting with me still is the idea of unlocking from a binary of either working or sleeping, and to you know, as Joni was saying, to think about rest in an integrated way and not in a kind of binary way, which is part of staying within a system that I think we're kind of, you know, dreaming out of actually. So I find that really interesting. Spoke a lot about the aspiration of a 3 to 4 hour workday, which, you know, I don't know about any of y'all, but listen, that's my goal in life. And even in that, actually, we spoke about thinking about work quite broadly. So there's, you know, the kind of work equals productivity equals food in the fridge type of work. And then there's other kinds of work that is about being with other people in these formations of solidarity and care and support that must also be considered work. You know, it is a kind of emotional labor. It is a kind, you know, it might be valuable to also expand one's idea of what it even means to work at all. So that you know, care can slide in as opposed to sit in opposition, you know, can be part of a kind of coherent day and week and month and year, as opposed to I'm going to work until I'm flat and then I'm going to go on holiday for 2 weeks, for those who can, you know, which, you know, great if that's possible. But if it isn't, there still has to be a way to feel like it's attainable. Yeah, so that's a bit of a riff, what came out in ours.
I just want to say, just Mwenya, because I think it's such an interesting question to put in, is that this idea of the secret third thing,
yes,
as like I think it's just so interesting to keep thinking about. Like there's rest, and then it's productivity, and like what's the secret third thing? You know, like where does it like exist in this kind of trickster mentality vibe?
I love that. I'm glad you said that, because that's a nice segue into what will hopefully be technically very smooth, but just bear with us if it isn't. I'm going to share a link to WooClap, a site called WooClap, which you don't need to register for, even though it might say that you do. Do not bother, you don't need to. And there's a question that we're inviting you to respond to. I'm going to share my screen. And the idea is that each of your responses will build a collective set of thoughts and ideas and responses to this question. And let me just find it on my side. So the question is, how might we reach towards a more rested future? And I'm going to share this screen. Do you all have a way to respond to this question from WooClap? So there's a code in there that you should be prompted to insert somewhere. And let me just share so that we're all looking at the same thing.
So the code is not working for me.
It's not working. We might
code.
have
turn into a stone.
Oh wait,
Somebody's
it's just
response, yeah.
oh, here it is. It's just different. There's not a double F. I see.
So the code is
It works.
SX.
I tried it,
SLX.
it works.
Okay, great. So in your own time, you can put in more than one response. Let's just see if this works. The invitation is to respond to this question or to use it as a prompt. How might we reach towards a more rested future? So it can be something that has come up that you want to kind of record or archive, or it can be something that you're thinking about afresh, something that you're inspired to consider. And when you're ready, go ahead. And ideally, we will watch our contributions create a collective word cloud. So please continue to contribute to this word cloud. It's quite satisfying seeing it swim in and out of formation. But I also wanted to give you in the last few minutes, anyone who would like to, an opportunity to respond. We're kind of coming to the end of our time together. So to share any reflections about, this word cloud that's being built, or something that might have come up along the way over our last 2 hours together, but in the spirit of closing for now. And if you do, please go ahead and unmute and speak. Akash, go ahead.
So one thing came for me earlier, but I couldn't share in the group. And it was about using the form and putting that back into the content, like here, right here in the session after the breakouts, we took a moment to rest, right? So we're not just talking about rest, but we're also resting. So similarly, I'm working on a project about sustainability, and we were also talking about how we can make the process sustainable for not just participants, but also the organizing team. So really being informed by the form, and then, making that part of the process and the content. So yeah, and vice versa.
Oh, I love that. If it's not here already, please find a way to put it in. Thank you. Yeah, lovely.
This is looking so beautiful.
Shiva and Nika, Anisha, Natalia, Johnny, I wondered if any of you wanted to, kind of say anything else before we pause. It doesn't feel quite right to say that we are wrapping. I mean, from my side, just a really big thanks. This has felt like a very different thing to be doing in my day, which is restful, like at this time on a Monday, my day does not look like it does. And so it feels like an interesting, slow, easy thing to have inserted into the beginning of the week. And I really appreciate everybody's input and energy and contribution and sharing. And I aspire to have a work day that feels more like this, that has the feeling of this kind of gathering. So I thank you very much for that.
I want to thank you because, being an organizer and being a producer, I'm totally stressed every time I'm doing a project. And for a change, I think it was for the first time, it was really sustainable and very careful and restful for me. I wasn't nervous for a minute. Things went very well, but even if they weren't going well, it still felt very comfortable to be here. And I feel much more relaxed now than before. And it's also very important to say that I think it's because of you moderating this session in such a calm and very careful way. Thanks for doing that, and thank you for everyone who participated. I really enjoyed being in a group, and it was wonderful, to spend an hour together and not paying attention at the time at all.
Thank you, Nika. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
I
Please
also
take
like to
screenshots.
thank everyone for being here. It was a real pleasure to meet all of you. And I'm just looking at this wonderful word cloud, and I think, oh my God, this is abundance. Because sometimes we think of rest as something scarce that we need to, squeeze in the middle of work, in the middle of things. And here we have such an abundance. And I feel a lot of gratitude when I look at this. Thank you all, guys. See you.
Maybe I
Agreed.
can just jump in on the abundance bridge. I want to take a walk on the abundance bridge. I think also that, like, thank you so much, Mwenya, also for your facilitation vibe, and your organizing vibe is it makes me feel very calm. And also I'm reminded again, like, of being a student and learning from so many people and from the group that we were in, and also being reminded that, like, yeah, it's abundant, but like that rest is available to us. It's like, it is available. And that, like, a collective is more than two people. So you can create your own little collectives of care. Thank you.
It's such a soothing thought. A collective is, you just need one other person and you are a collective. That's really soothing. Yeah, I'm going to remember that. I also want to take a moment to acknowledge a little bit of stress that I'm feeling, but I'm also kind of regulating myself through that I'm feeling stressed about not resting enough. So I'm kind of acknowledging that and reminding myself that I'm still learning, and I'm operating in structures much larger, much more powerful than myself, and that the attempt is always on, and that the learning is a continuum. So I'm also telling myself and thinking that if anyone else is feeling distressed, then yeah. But thank you all of you. Yeah, I want to sort of +1 on all of the things about Mwenya's facilitation. It's also what Akash spoke about, bringing in a certain vibe into what we're doing, actioning what we're talking about. All of that is so important, and a constant reminder that this is possible. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to happen overnight, and we can do this step by step, and we can learn and unlearn and relearn constantly. And thank you, Mwenya, for actioning some of that. So thank you. Yeah. And everyone who was in the room today.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Nisha. I'm going to stop sharing now, and we will make this, if you haven't taken your own screenshot, we'll make sure that it's on the OpenScape site. But please feel free, you can also, we can send it to you directly if you like. But yeah, this is us. Thank you all. Happy resting.
Before we pause, I just want one other thing that I wanted to just mention. Some of the notes that were taken in the sessions will also be shared with everyone who participated, so that we know a little more about what happened in the other sessions. Just give us some time so that we can put it all together and share it with you. And we hope that this is just a beginning of conversations around rest and care that we've started, and we've put the seeds of, and we hope that there are more sessions that you host that we can be part of as well. So really looking forward to more exchanges from all of you somewhere, somehow in the future. Thank you very much, Stefan and Cecile, for all the back-end work. And Nika, Moinwa, my co-conspirators on this, Nisha, Joni, Natalia, we couldn't have done this without you. So thank you. And everyone who attended, thank you so much for your generosity.
Yay.